My name is Ajay Nair. I am a professor and chair in the Department of Horticulture at Iowa State University, and have been fortunate of working with Maurice and Anne and now Myrna. We had a USDA Organic Research Extension Initiative grant that was in 2019, and we started our work together. And since then, it's been a wonderful experience learning about California and the crops you all grow there and how poultry fits in that system, and sharing what we do here in the Midwest. We are definitely not as big as you are in California, but there are small scale farmers here, horticultural growers who grow produce, and also some of them are interested in pasture poultry. And that is how this collaboration with California, Iowa, and Kentucky and NCAT came into being. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share some of the findings and results, especially some examples of what we have done here in Iowa in the pasture poultry system, and how we have tried to fit different cover crops into the system and vegetables. And again, some pictures from our grower collaborators who have worked with us in the past. So I'll present for about 15 minutes and 15-20 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. And after that, Maurice has a set of slides for us from the poultry side of things. So thank you, Maurice, for the generous introduction and also for leading this BFRDB grant. So you all, for many of you, as I saw, 33% interested in pastured poultry or have done poultry in some way. This definition is not new, but it's basically a farming system where chickens and turkeys and ducks are raised on pasture, and the birds have full access to fresh grass and insects, and then we usually rotate the system in the plot so that there is diversity in soil and also to maintain soil health. So this picture, what you see here, is from Iowa State. We have a small chicken tractor in which we put these birds, the red rages, and you can see these birds are on top of the cover crop. This is cowpea and teff, and they were having a wonderful time. And the system, you'll see more pictures. I'll show you. We keep this chicken tractor moving. Every day it moves so that the birds have access to fresh land and fresh biomass. So why integrate poultry and vegetable crops? This was a big no-no, or even now a big no-no, because there are issues and concerns with respect to contamination, with produce contamination, salmonella, E. coli, and many of our growers were just keeping these two systems away from each other. There was no integration. And even now, when I talk about poultry and vegetables, they look at me and say, "Oh, how can you do that? There are issues with foodborne illnesses and pathogens." But we, through this experiment with the previous grant and with this BFRDP program, are trying to help understand how can this integration happen. The vegetables and the poultry do not need to be on the same plot at the same time, but there could be rotations we can follow in which we can integrate both of them. So there could be a vegetable followed by a poultry, or it could be a vegetable and then maybe you have a cover crop, and I'll show you some examples of that. And then you can put the poultry on the cover crop. So that's a rotation. And most of the rotations I'll show you here today are for Iowa growing conditions. We have a short growing season starting somewhere middle of April and goes till about middle of October, and then the frost comes. So what can you do in this short duration? So in addition, we want to integrate poultry with vegetables because it decreases off-farm input. We have shown in our publications, manuscripts, and now that when we have poultry integrated into a vegetable system, in years to come, like 1 or 2 years, we can reduce the amount of fertilizer input, the organic nitrogen fertilizer input, by almost 50 to 60%, because the manure which the poultry provides is enough to provide the nutrients that are required for crops such as broccoli or leafy greens. So we have shown that. And also, having poultry has a great effect on soil fertility and health. These birds, they spread manure. There's a lot of organic matter that is added, and the microbial biomass population of the soil shoots up, which is good. There's more mineralization happening because of the microbial activity. These birds also help take care of some of the pests and weeds, and we learned it both ways. In some cases it does work, but in some cases, if there are weeds in the plot, and this is a particular weed which the bird doesn't want to eat, then maybe their seeds will be dispersed. So you might have an issue. But most of the time, these birds are doing a fantastic job just cleaning up the field when you introduce them in these chicken tractors. And of course, we want our growers to diversify their income. They are not just bound to sell vegetables at the farmers market or through CSA, but maybe they can diversify the income by having eggs or by adding a broiler meat. And that's a great integration and helps to expand the market for our sustainable and organic growers. In addition, there are animal welfare benefits. This is a picture from one of our grower collaborators' side, Jason, and you can see how he's trying to, he added some crops. This is teff out there and some of these birds, and you can see him fencing around because we want to keep them in a certain area. But the animal welfare benefit, it's out there. We know that the birds raised on pasture, they enjoy natural behaviors as foraging, dust bathing. They roam freely, there's less stress on it. And the second point is something which we demonstrated through our organic project, that birds that are pastured, this is the broiler in the meat. They tend to have better nutritional profile, including higher omega-3s, vitamin A's and E's, and less fat as compared to conventional poultry. So this we have already demonstrated, and many of our consumers go for pastured poultry for this reason. But there was not much literature available showcasing this. And so we were happy that with the organic grant and this BFRDP, we were able to demonstrate and show some of these numbers. Yes, the content is higher. Because we did experiments in which we had pastured poultry and then the same breed in a confinement inside. So we were able to do side-by-side comparison. We made our chicken tractor and we learned different iterations of it. This was a chicken tractor we made at the Horticulture Research Station in 2017, 2018. You can see we made all of this with PVC and a wire mesh. And you can see a small footprint here, some birds in there, some hanging, the food for them. It was a PVC structure, 5x4, so 20 square feet, 10 birds each. And then we still have fencing around just so that these birds are safe from predators. But then we did graduate from 2018 to make a more solid and bigger structure, which is easy for the person who operates that. In this case, this is my grad student, Maria Belinki, and you can see she has to sit down on the floor, open the cage, and go in, go out. So this was not easy if you're doing it on a daily basis, changing the food, changing the water. So then we came up with this design, which is a bigger one. As you can see, this is a 10 feet by 5 feet. So this is 50 square feet. We put 25 birds in there, and we added wheels to this design, and you can see this wooden latch here. You can flip this, and when you flip this, the whole structure rises by about 3 to 4 inches, and then it is easy to push. And so there were different iterations of this, but this is the current one which we use. You can see half of it is covered, half of it is open, and for somebody to get inside it to change the feed and change the water, you can see this latch here. This whole door opens from the top. So instead of kneeling in or crawling in, you just step into it. So this has been a great time saver and also easy to maneuver and to manage things. And so we are very happy that we were able to construct this, again, part of this grant, and we have shared the design of this with many of our growers who are interested to build their own. So this is a nice one, which one of my grad student, Brandon Carpenter, he's the one who actually designed it. This is the same in action. This is the third iteration. And in this, what you will see is that we changed the wood because the wood was cracking into metal. So I can just flip this metal, this side, and the whole thing will lift up by about 3 to 4 inches. And then 2 people can easily push with the birds in there and move them over the cover crop residue or the biomass. So I told you a couple of rotations, and this is an example. This is something which I want to highlight through this webinar here, is how can you integrate and how can you think creatively? And these are 3 of the years our research study conducted in 21, 22, and 23. You can see we had one rotation where we had spinach as the spring crop. And after the spinach was harvested, sometime in beginning of June, we introduced the poultry Freedom Ranger in these chicken tractors. They ate whatever the leftover of the spinach was. I'll show you some pictures. And then when that was done, these birds are on that pasture for about 6 weeks. So they are inside for 3 weeks and they come out and they spend 6 more weeks, 6 to 5, 5 to 6 weeks, and then they are slaughtered. So we are trying to still keep the window tight, but we need to acknowledge that these birds are outside and not growing inside, and they're moving around. So it takes about 5 to 6 weeks for them to finish. And then once that is done, then in the fall, a farmer can come or a grower can come and plant cereal rye and winter pea as a rotation. So that's one in 2021. In 2022, what we did is after the cereal rye and winter pea in the spring, we terminated that and we planted lettuce. And once the lettuce was over, we again introduced the poultry. We can see Ross 708, and then we put a cereal rye and winter pea again. And the third year, we finished that we started with broccoli, and then we put broccoli on the poultry on the broccoli, followed by the cover crop. So what I wanted to show you here is the poultry is integrated into vegetable in 3 different vegetables: in spinach, in lettuce, and in broccoli. That was rotation 1. And in rotation 2, we kind of used the same crops, but instead of going soon after the vegetable, so we finished the vegetable, we tilled the vegetable in, we seeded a cover crop, in this case cow, pea, and teff, and then we introduced the poultry. So that was our second rotation, and we changed the crop, as you can see, spinach, lettuce, and broccoli in the 3 years. But the goal here is to have a vegetable followed by a cover crop followed by poultry. And then we have a third rotation where we did not have poultry, and this is for comparison to study differences in soil, in insects in the soil, organic matter, the rotation aspect, the economics, all of that. So that was rotation 3. So just to show you an example of how these rotations can be developed or created. So now I'll show you some pictures. This is rotation 1, chickens after a spring vegetable. So all our spinach has been harvested. So you can see these beds of spinach. We harvested multiple times. And then after that, we put the chicken tractor on it. And as you can see in this case, spinach, there is not much of a residue to begin with. This chicken tractor goes on this chicken plot, it moves every day, and by the time it finishes one whole rotation on the entire plot, it's 15 days. Then it goes back to the point 1. It again goes from point 1 to point 15, and then again goes back to point 1. So it goes on a certain piece of land about 3 times, so 45 days. And that's what the time to finish the chickens. So that's spinach. This is an example where we have harvested broccoli. And as you can know, there's a lot of residue after the broccoli is harvested. And then we just bring the chicken tractor and lay it on top of the broccoli. And then the chickens are inside eating the broccoli residue as the chicken tractor moves. Feel free to write your questions in the chat box. I know Myrna is moderating them, and I'll be happy to answer it at the end. So any question that you have in mind, please do type in the chat box. You can see in the spinach, same example, after the first grazing, just after one time that the closest spot towards us was the day 1, then it's day 2 and day 3. And you can see already in one day itself, the birds have kind of completely taken out the foliage. There's nothing in there. So land is more exposed. So in this system, if you keep the pasture poultry in this system, you might see more weeds coming in because there's not much biomass there to suppress those weeds. So that is something which we learned, that there has to be some kind of a biomass there for the extended period of time. This is broccoli. You can see this chicken tractor has moved 4 times now, one from farthest to closest and one more time back. And you can see in just one pass what they have done. The birds just completely pecked away on all the leaves, and now the main stem is left. Now there is some regrowth that happens, not a lot, but there's only a little amount of, and they also love these heads which are bolted, or there were small sprouts that were coming after the harvest. So the birds really have a good time in the broccoli plot. And this is to show you the second graze of the broccoli. You can see there's almost nothing left there. They have completely decimated the foliage. You see in this case, we have some sandbags around the chicken tractor, because this was actually 2023, we had some issues with mink at the plot, and the mink just came and it took some birds out. So we had to secure and not let the mink get to the birds by putting those sandbags. But in terms of residue, you can see broccoli residue is completely gone. This is the second grazing, second time this chicken tractor is going over that plot. So that was rotation one. I show you some examples and show some pictures with spinach and broccoli. This is the second rotation where, if you are not growing broccoli or spinach, you might be seeding a cover crop. So in this case, we seeded two different cover crops together. A teff, which is an upcoming cover crop. I don't know if it is, maybe it is available in California too. I'm sure growers are using it, but this is a cover crop that originated from Ethiopia. So it's a more water, drought tolerant cover crop, establishes quickly, and you don't need a lot. You need only 8 pounds to an acre. And what we did is we mixed that with cowpea at the rate of 75 to 100 pounds per acre. So this plot, there was spinach, or there could have been broccoli. Removed it, tilled it under, and we put the cover crop. So the cover crop grew for about 60 days, and you can see the lush foliage of cowpea in there. There's teff also in there, and you see the chicken tractor introduced on top of this mulch. So maybe a more closer picture. The first round is a little challenging because of the biomass in there, but because the tractor lifts up a little bit, we can push it easily and then introduce our birds in there. And you can see those birds, about 2.5, 3 weeks old when they were introduced in those chicken tractors. This is the first graze of that system. Now, this is not vegetable, this is the cover crop. And as you can see, in one pass itself, we have kind of flattened the cover crop, the cowpea and teff, and we are moving on. So this is the next batch, as I said, we'll go 15 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and at the end will be 15, and they'll come back to plot number 1. So this is the first graze. And this is to show you what the first graze looks like, and the fresh, which on the right hand side is the chicken tractor hasn't gone over that yet, but the first pass itself, you can see they have just leveled it fully. Now, interestingly, this is the second graze. So this chicken tractor, you see it on the site number 1 after going through all this one time. So it was here closest to us, day 15, and day 16 it went back. And what I wanted to show you here is you can see the cover crop has grown back. The cowpea has come back, which is promising. So in 15 days we can still have regrowth. So let's say if the plot was bigger, you might be coming at that plot not in 15, but maybe in 30 days. So there'll be a much more foliage available. In our case, the plots are small because this is for research. So this is quite promising that even in 15 days, we can have some regrowth. Of course, you might extend the time between when it comes back to point 1, and then that way you have more foliage. This is the third graze, and you can see in almost the final time, the chicken tractor is going over the plot, and they have kind of just leveled everything, eaten everything. The cowpea is gone. All you have is the stems out there. And you can see the birds inside that area. So those were the two examples, one with vegetables and then with the cover crop. This is an example from a grower collaborator. And what he has done is he has introduced this concept inside his caterpillar tunnel. And this is an excellent way, especially in early spring, before you plant anything in your caterpillar tunnel or your high tunnel, just add the chickens in there. And then you can see there is some cover crop out there. I believe it's cereal rye. And these birds are brooding here, and they go out, they come in, and they are just here for the entire time for their lifespan. And now the grower here, Jordan Klassen, he usually is not into meat, but it's for eggs. And he finds the system very unique because then he fertilizes his high tunnel before he comes and plants, let's say, a tomato or a cucumber in this caterpillar tunnel, which he keeps moving. So this was quite interesting to see. In this case, safety-wise, the birds are safe. There is warmth in there because it's warm in there in the high tunnel, and they are in one place. And he can finish this and then plant his vegetable after that. So this is the caterpillar tunnel. This is the same grower, Jordan Klassen. I know Maurice and you have visited the grower when you were here in 2022, I believe. This is another example where the grower, you can see they have put the fence around, the birds are in there. And this is sorghum Sudan grass, another cover crop that he has tested as a pasture poultry cover crop. So in this case, that chicken tractor stays there for almost 4 to 5 months, sometimes even 6 months. And then next 6 months is moved to a different spot. And now these are layers, and this is for egg production. But this system also works great because if you can dedicate a plot, maybe a 200 by 100 plot or a 200 by 200 plot, and have a chicken tractor stationed there, doesn't move at all with the cover crop, and the birds, they forage out there, they have a space inside, they're safe, and yeah, Jordan can, collect the eggs in this for his CSAs. So sorghum Sudan grass also is a good cover crop that could be considered. Again, Jordan's site here, in this case, it's cereal rye. So again, he has kind of followed the model of using like a 200 by 100, and then he just keeps moving them every 4 to 5 months. You can see cereal rye crop on the left-hand side also, which he would introduce after this is done. He'll move it there. But cereal rye also a great cover crop for these birds. They in this mulch, there are a lot of insects that hide, and the birds, they love to, run around those grasshoppers or those worms or those caterpillars, those bugs, and they're super happy in the system. So cereal rye is another cover crop that could be integrated in such a system. Other example this is a combination of cowpea, mustard, and oats. So once the growing season is over, let's say sometime in early September, a grower would come, maybe not early September, maybe August, sometime mid-August, if you want to have some biomass with cover crop, or have it during the summer. Have the cover crop grow in the summer, sometime in June and July, or July and August, and then introduce the poultry after that. So since Jordan has been working with us on this project, he has been testing different cover crops that could be used for pastured poultry system. So I like this system because there's more diversity here. It's not just one set of cover crops. It's more diverse food, maybe different type of bugs in those systems that these birds can eat. So also to give you some other examples that could be used in a pasture poultry system, clover is something which many of our growers know of. I mean, that's what has been the standard when it comes to pasture poultry. Alfalfa, ryegrass, millet, buckwheat, mustard greens, all of them are suitable. And again, we want to make sure that there's enough biomass there on the in the cover crop so that these birds have that biomass. And maybe if you can lengthen the duration when they come back to the same spot, if you are rotating, that will be a great idea. Unless you do something what Jordan is doing, where it's there for a couple of months and it's a bigger plot and the birds go in and out. That way, that pasture can sustain those birds for a longer amount of time. In terms of vegetables, what are some vegetables that can be integrated? You saw some examples with broccoli, spinach, and lettuce. I didn't have a picture of lettuce, but you can have sweet corn as an example. So many of our growers, once they finish the successive planting of sweet corn, once the sweet corn is harvested, they would either flail mow it or maybe just leave it there and then introduce the chicken tractor in that plot. So sweet corn also provides some benefit in terms of the height of the stubble that is left over of the plant. So there's some protection for those birds. Squash can be used. Tomatoes after harvest. Of course, Maurice has done research at California at their site where they had tomatoes. So you need to be careful of the trellising system and how that will work in this. But if it's not trellised, no problem. Leafy greens, we have used spinach and also brassicas, kales and collards. They work great with the system. So there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of vegetables and cover crop that could be used to make it a pastured poultry system. So finally, I know Maurice has some slides for us from his end, from the poultry side. Our experience working with the pastured poultry system has been very positive. There's definitely benefits to the environment. Consumers are on board. We can integrate cover crops in the system. There could be rotations. And especially with CSAs and farmers market, when our growers connect with their consumers saying that they have a sustainable system like this, our consumers are really happy, especially with eggs. If they can provide eggs and vegetables or meat and vegetables at the farmers market, our consumers are really happy. They see a closed system, less dependence on off-farm input, and much of it is contained within the farm. So with that, I just want to thank many of the people who have been part of this project. Again, Iowa State, Kentucky, NCAT, UC Davis, and USDA NIFA. Many of the researchers who have been very helpful in learning. I'm a horticulturist, so it was a learning curve for me. But having Maurice and Anne and Dave from Kentucky has been a very refreshing experience for me to learn about poultry, and many grad students also thoroughly enjoyed it.
Perfect. So I'll be kind of short and sweet. So my background is more on the poultry side. We've definitely focused on coop design. We've also done a lot of stuff, and we do have some results that we can share that we actually have shared. We have a paper that we're working on that looks at social media analysis. What do people say when they go online and they talk about integrated and pastured poultry? That's important to know, because if you're trying to sell this product, it's important to understand what are the keywords that people are thinking about. What are the things that people want? Words like sustainable, words that don't use antibiotics, all those type of things. Natural. Those are kind of the types of keywords that people are keen on, and we've done some what's called web scraping or social media analysis that we're working up the data on that captures kind of a wide swath of social media and what people are saying about this type of production. Those are probably good words to think about, and good aspects to think about when marketing those products. People did Ajay, and a couple of questions were related to nutrition. So that's ultimately, there's a couple big issues. Slides aren't advancing. See, there we go. So there's a couple big issues. I'm gonna move around in a second. First of all, I'm very informal, so feel free to reach out to me. The most important part of this meeting is that you guys know my email address, and we know each other now. So when you guys have questions, we could reach out. I look at the world, unfortunately, after the last 3 years through the lens of high path AI. So while I love these type of production systems that are integrated, that are very creative and unique, that leverage land in all kinds of ways that we kind of define as sustainable, I do look at it through the lens of high path AI, and until further notice, we're still in that world. I did want to highlight, though, that this grant covers field projects in California, Kentucky, and Iowa. But there are small and medium farms all over the U.S. It is one of our kind of superpowers, our ability to grow food at a large scale, at a small scale. This type of production is very popular, not just in the U.S., but in other parts of the world. And we have we're very lucky in that we have a lot of land that we can grow poultry and crops on. And there's a lot of different iterations of this, as you can see kind of from the map there. But I did want to kind of mention we are dealing with the largest animal disease outbreak in our history, and in the world's history, and it's going to be really important in the fall that we really kind of hunker down again in order to prevent what's been happening from continuing to persist. And that's what the map on the right reflects. I did want to point out, we have looked at these alternative systems for, a good decade or so now, doing surveys and things like that. And, there are a lot of challenges with these systems. And, this is a paper on the top here that's probably a good 10 years old. And the same challenges exist. Feed costs are challenging for various reasons, in part because these farms are smaller, and it's hard to get any economy of scale. So feed conversion ratio is not just the only challenge. The other challenge is your feed costs are going to be more expensive than the conventional competition. That being said, consumers want these kind of products, so I think there are opportunities there. I live in Northern California. You'd be surprised. It's amazing how much people will spend for a dozen eggs, high path AI or no high path AI, when it's from a pastured environment. So I think there's a real opportunity that exists there, and even small efficiencies when it comes to feed can play a significant role. One of the things to remember is the operating costs of raising birds. About 70% of the operating costs are in feed. So anything you can do, kind of honoring the system that you're using, anything you can do to reduce feed costs are huge for from an economic perspective. I'm going to mention just a couple things. Predation is a huge issue on these farms, and I want to highlight that also that we do have a lot of these farms are in very close proximity to all kinds of habitat for waterfowl, which are the primary reservoir of avian influenza. So we just need to be aware of it. The thing that I always highlight to farmers is whatever system you use, just do the best that you can. There is no perfect system. We have so many farms that are broken with high-path AI that are like fortresses, right? There is no perfect system is kind of the sense, kind of the take-home message from there. And then I really also want to highlight veterinarians are very hard to find. We on our website we have information about veterinarians that will treat poultry. There are commercial veterinarians. There's backyard poultry. There's veterinarians that treat backyard poultry that do dabble in kind of pastured kind of poultry. And then the last thing I want to point out, just when we think about these challenges from a veterinarian's perspective, when we think about these alternative systems, is disease. And when I went to vet school, I remember talking to professors about these systems because I've always been intrigued by them, and there was this kind of reticence to even acknowledge them and work with these producers. Consumers want these kind of products. Our data and other data, suggest even though the risks, kind of seem greater, that our data suggests that when it comes to salmonella and things like that, that there isn't a greater risk from this type of production. So again, whatever system you're going to use, just do the best that you can. And to one of the earlier comments about these rotational systems, birds will shed salmonella. There are these rules, these 90 and 120-day rules for the national organic standards now. Those numbers are still kind of a line in the sand, and ultimately the most important thing is kind of the system that you use and optimizing it with respect to management and rotations and good husbandry. Those are the things that are going to prevent disease transmission. I will mention poultry don't naturally always carry salmonella. Rodents do for the most part. So reducing the potential for rodents to interact with poultry and farmland and wild birds to interact with that. I know it's easier said than done, but to me, that's the best kind of bang for your buck. So in California, much drier environment. We grew kind of a mixed pasture. The coops that we used, kind of similar to what Ajay described. I'll show you a couple other designs that we used. They're challenging to work with. This one here is very stable. This plywood. Plywood's not perfect for various reasons. It can be a little heavy, but the kind of 2x4s, and if you have treated plywood, that can help resist some of the moisture challenges that the plywood's just not very good at handling. I will say the nice part, the other thing that I really want to highlight is whatever you use, I really, really highly recommend using hardware cloth. And hardware cloth is just whatever you do, don't use chicken wire. The name chicken wire, I know, seems to imply that we should use it, but as many of you probably know, chicken wire is very weak. It keeps chickens in, but it doesn't keep predators out. So it kind of does half its job. Hardware cloth, which is really hard to work with, which will tear up your hands and your face and arms. It can be hard to work with, but my God, once you have it on there and you have a staple gun and some good wire clippers, you can really do a huge amount of protecting your birds by using that hardware cloth. I like the 1/4-inch hardware cloth because rodents are pretty sneaky, and the 1/2-inch, believe it or not, rodents can kind of bend a little and still get in there. So we tried a bunch of different systems, and the point I want to make is that some people do these rotational systems with chickens, and some people do them without chickens. The system that we tried as part of this BFRDP grant and a beginning farmer grant, and also Ajay's USDA organic grant was more focused on broilers than layers. The advantage of broilers is that you can grow them in 5 to 6 weeks. They'll get to market weight. You can process them, and then you can have that land be fallow or turned into a cover crop. Layers are a little more challenging in the sense that in order to get a layer to start producing eggs, you're putting a 20-week investment basically into those birds. And that's a lot of feed. So there's a lot of farmers that do that. But layers can be challenging in the sense that if you don't, if you have some bad luck, you're in the worst case scenario, your layers have some kind of disease at 19 or 20 weeks, and you've just invested all this time and money, and now your layers are not able to produce eggs. That being said, once you get good at layers, I think most farmers, at least that I've interacted with, they like layers for various reasons. First of all, at farmers markets, eggs draw attention in a way that the meat doesn't always do that. The second reason is consumers really like eggs, so they will buy that. And then from when I talk to people at farmers markets and CSAs and things like that, the eggs and the vegetables are kind of that coordination between the two is very attractive to consumers. So I'm not, I kind of want to go on to the coop designs, but you can see that, in these three different areas, we had very similar kind of systems where we had cover crops for over half the year. What I would say is that if you have a layer system, the thing that needs to change is you have to be able to have enough cover crops to keep rotating your birds so they don't eat all of the teff or whatever cover crop that you're growing. So it can be a slightly, I guess the logistics can be a slightly a little more challenging, but completely doable when you're working with layers versus broilers. It's just a slightly different system. Most people will still raise their layers at least as until about 6 weeks. They'll raise the birds indoors. These broilers, I think we raised them indoors for just maybe like a week till they got most of their down feathers, and then in our climate during the spring, we were able to put them out to pasture, and they did great. So I already talked about this, but just wanted to highlight again like what some of the challenges are. Feed costs is the biggie. Lack of processing facilities in California, that's a challenge. There are options there, but predation is also a big one, and that's where that hardware cloth comes in. I love data, love looking at data, so I will really kind of highlight whether it's feed conversion ratio, whether it's counting eggs every day, whether it's weighing how much water is consumed every day. Data is fundamental to understanding how to optimize your system. I really encourage you, whether you're using Google Sheets or whether you're using just a notebook, to keep data. That's the first thing whenever a farmer reaches out to our lab and asks questions. That's the first thing that we always kind of focus on. So I'm just going to go over a couple coop designs, and then again, you guys have my contact information. We use, as you can see here, these fences that are electrified. They give you just a little jolt. It's just meant more to keep the birds in. It's not perfect, but it does allow, we can move our coop, and or you'll see this structure here, which is like a shade structure, which is made of PVC pipe. You can move that also around this space, so you don't always have to move the wire fencing, the electrified fencing. Here's a larger coop that we designed. These kind of pulleys are very similar to in California and a lot of other states, like how we'll try to set up our ventilation systems. where it's basically just curtains that you can pull up or down, and the birds are kind of at the bottom there. Birds don't typically like wind too much, so it's good to have good ventilation to reduce ammonia, to cool off the coop, especially when they go in there at 5 or 6 o'clock at night. California, in our part of California, it's pretty hot still, but you don't want wind blowing on them. And then during the winter, you can kind of buckle these down. It's a tarp pulley system, and I think we have instructions actually on our website. We've created a bunch of different systems. To me, you're kind of balancing between weight, the ability to move, and kind of structural stability. The one that you see in the back, we made so light that it was actually hard to move because it kind of buckled a little on itself. This one over here needed a tractor to move, and this is one that we designed for some work that we did in Nepal several years ago. And then the last thing I just really want to highlight is I think it's really important, even in a pastured system where you do have interaction with wildlife and the outside and rodents and all those things and wind, I think it's still really important to try to optimize your biosecurity. And ultimately that means getting your chicks, perhaps most importantly, getting your chicks from a reputable source, being a hatchery that is part of the National Poultry Improvement Plan. Whether you're organic or conventional, I think that's really important because they do some surveillance for diseases, and then you're making sure that your birds, when they come to you, they don't, for the most part, don't have salmonella already, don't have mycoplasma, don't have other diseases. So that's really, really fundamental, and I hope people are able to kind of take that apart from that. And then, I have this comment here, avoiding mixed age flocks if possible. So some pastured producers, this is the last comment I'll make, because I've seen some pastured producers where they're very clever. They'll have two different breeds, and as a laying flock goes out of production, they're putting in the next flock. So let's say they're taking out laying hens that are a year old, and they're going to send those to processing. They want the next flock in there, and there's sometimes some overlap. But if they do two different color breeds of layers, they can have that overlap, and it's pretty easy to separate those flocks out. So there are ways to do it where it's still not ideal where they mix with each other, but I'm not as opposed to it in those type of scenarios, because there are ways to separate them out. You just want to make sure that there's no disease going on when you're having those interactions. So with that, I know we're up against it with time, so I'll take any questions that folks have.